Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner,
And I'm Chad Ahern.
and today I'd like you to help me welcome our special guest, Adam Mustoe. He is a fellow Gallup-Certified coach, and he's a senior pastor at First United Methodist Church in Kearney, Missouri. So, Adam is my very special friend in Strengths. We met in 2017, right, Adam?
Yeah, we were certified together that same week in Omaha.
Yeah. It was amazing week. So, because of that, and because I know you so well and your activator talents, we wanted to invite you to join us today while we talk about this talent strength of activator. Chad, do you want to tell us what the Gallup short description is?
Sure. So Gallup defines this very briefly as people who are exceptionally talented in the activator theme can make things happen by turning thoughts into action. They want to do things now rather than simply talk about them. So I'm going to be upfront with everybody since we're talking about activator. Activator is number 34 for me. So that's why I'm so grateful that Adam has come to join us today. Jen, you have it as your fifth, number
Yep.
5. Yep. Okay. So we've got two people that very much live this theme, and I'm excited to ask them some questions and learn a little bit more about activator for the benefit of our listeners. So let's first start with a question that we've approached in all of our other episodes, which is really kind of how does this theme show up for you personally? How does this sort of play out in your life? And Adam, because you're our guest, I'm going to start with you and welcome you and offer first shot at this question.
Thanks, Chad and Jen. It's fun to be with y'all, and I'm excited to dig in. Activator's 3 for me, so I'm happy to be a resident subject matter expert. For me, activator is really about a bias for action. And we were joking about when Jen first reached out to me, hey, do you want to come on our podcast? Yes. And then, yeah, discussion over. And then a couple of minutes later, I was like, okay, when and what are we doing? Bias for action. I think that, in meeting situations at work, sometimes you'll get, I don't know if it's the royal we, but it's people will use the word we, and it's like, well, who are we talking about here? My dad used to say, let me know when we gets here. So when someone says, you know what we should do, I'll say, okay, well, who's we, and when are we gonna, when is this we gonna do it, and how, and it's just, it helps kind of move things forward. And I think that's one of the big, pun intended, strengths of activator is that bias for action, and like the description said, turning concepts into reality.
Okay. Jen, what about you?
Yeah, I'm completely agree with Adam that we, I typically, when someone says that, like, we should do this, I think that means me. Like, I'm automatically like taking responsibility for that. Oh,
I like that.
like you wanted me to do that then, right? Because my activators all like, yeah, let's go. As number 5, like, it doesn't feel like 5, it feels like 1. And I don't know if that's with everybody who's activator high, but I feel like it could overrun like every action of my day, of my life. So I shared in the pre-show about, like, I've always been low on the ADD spectrum, like as far as having attention deficit disorder. And I would say that my activator is probably the one at play there, because I am happy to like pick up whatever's going on and move forward with that. So I think it makes it so it keeps things moving. And that's one of the things that's been a really big benefit, and how I see it play out for me is that, like, impatience almost with inaction. Like, I want to move, I want to get things started.
I have found it so helpful to have this vocabulary now around strengths. I remember one time I was in an end of year meeting. It was around this time of year. This was probably 10 years ago or more. And the church I was with, one of our goals was to study, I don't remember, some trend or something for the next year. Our goal was to study something for 365 days. And I started, like, my hands got sweaty, and I had like this physical reaction to this concept. And I was looking around the room like, am I the only one that thinks this is the most ridiculous idea ever? I think I actually said, that's that line from Zoolander, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, just the thought of studying something and waiting for a year it blew my mind, and I was like on an island with that. And now understanding that I'm activator, I could probably tone down the intensity of my reaction in the meeting, but it helped make a lot of sense of that moment, which I'll never forget, because I was like, they say a great sign of a strength is when you think everybody else is that way too.
Yeah.
I mean, I just couldn't believe that I was the only one that thought this was the worst goal ever. So that was a real time for me that I will always think back to when I think about activator.
Just you talking about that, like thinking about something for a year, like my hands are getting sweaty. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, no.
Take a break. Take a break.
No.
Well, so this is interesting because just reflecting back, and I know, Adam, you weren't on this previous show that I'm going to talk about, but Jen, you were talking about when we were talking about your achiever, that like if you can't achieve it in a day or like the next 48 hours, it's almost it doesn't make the to-do list. Not that you even keep a to-do list. So that's all other.
Right. Yeah. That's
we'll let people listen
issue.
to the achiever episode on that. But you made quite a comment about that short-term time frame, and I'm loving hearing the understanding from Adam around timelines. Just they've got to be almost short, almost instantaneous. I also think, just jokingly, Adam, you were asking about when we shows up. Apparently it's Jen, because she's the royal we that
I'm gonna remember
we
that.
is me, so she's gonna show up for your meeting.
If Jen needs to-do list items, I got some for you.
Right. Yeah. I always do. Just get me on them.
She said she doesn't even develop them because Activator wants to take action on all of them. So it's more work to develop the to list. But listen to the Activator episode if you want more details on
episode,
that. Yeah. So Jen, you mentioned something yesterday in our pre-show, getting ready for this, about sort of Gallup's long description. Well, we're not going to probably read the whole long description. You had said something about judging I think it was judging other people by what they get done, not so much what they think about or what they propose. Could you go a little further, or if you have the long description up, could you touch on that? Because I thought that was really beautiful and beneficial for people to understand this theme a little bit more.
Yeah, it was, you will be judged not by what you say, not by what you think, but what you get done. This doesn't frighten you, it pleases you. Yeah, absolutely true. Like, we know, like, actively, we, the collective we, right? Like, we know that like, you can't get anything done if you don't get it started. So let's get going. Like, even if we don't have all the pieces together. And, personally, that's a little bit like lends to where I am in life right now. So we made a decision, we in this case would be my husband and I, made a decision in 2019 that we are going to move to Florida. And my activator was like, yep, we're doing this, it's happening, and we're going to get it there quickly. Now, we made a like pros and cons list about why we were going to do that. I mean, it was a big step to leave our family and all of our friends and life there. Ultimately, when we were in Florida, it didn't work out like we thought. We did stay there all through the pandemic, which is a whole other issue that we can deal with. But the deliberative in myself and my husband, at his number one, we found that we could be stuck where we were and doing what we were doing forever, if not for my activator. So it's not like taking the energy that I have, and I was putting, like, things were not moving quick enough for me. Like, literally, we made the decision, this is what we're going to do. And I'm already like, okay, tomorrow, then we're moving tomorrow. Like, this is happening tomorrow. No, obviously not. And thank God for deliberative, because the things that we learned in our first like 5 weeks of just preparing for it have changed our life and made things so much easier for when we did hit the road. So, like, being activator, it meant taking that emotional energy, like Adam was talking about in that meeting, taking that emotional energy and then using it to propel me through some other things. So as much as I would say, like, I see it, what we focus on is what we see, right? I see the negative impacts of my activator really clearly, but I also need to remind myself how wonderful they are because of all the things I get started and can get accomplished, putting that with my achiever, because I'm able to just quick start and move through things. So yeah, nice. Then it's it's definitely one of those like double-edged swords, like we always talk about.
Yeah,
Chad.
yeah. Well, we've talked about that before, double-edged sword, or sort of that Goldilocks zone on a thermostat. You know, you're trying to find the right balance. Jen, you sort of teed up the next question I was going to ask, and I'm actually going to start on the negative so that we can sort of end with the positive on sort of how this has shown up in your life from a negative impact or a positive impact. And again, I'm going to start with you, actually, Adam. You've given sort of a broad perspective on the theme and how it shows up for you and how you live it out. But what's been sort of the negative impact of that theme in living it out? And then I'm going to bring it. I want to hear from both of you on the negative side, but then I definitely want to bring it back to the positive. So let's start with maybe some of the downfalls or some of the ways it gets in your way.
Sure. I think when you activate on something, it can quickly go from activation to fixation. You just kind of get this thing in your mind. I had got it in my head that I needed this. I don't know if you've seen the Starbucks cups from the I'm There series. So my family had gone to Disneyland, Disney World in Florida. And so they sell some only there, which means they're really expensive. So this is more than y'all want to know, but here in Missouri, it's very cold at winter. It's like in the 20s and 30s right now. So I started drinking hot tea because my wife loves tea. And so I started drinking hot tea. I'm like, well, I need a mug. Well, I eBayed this mug and I got it yesterday. I was very excited.
Nice.
Oh, there it is. Isn't that sweet? Well,
awesome.
like, you should have seen me like wheeling and dealing on eBay. So for like 2 days, my family's like, if I hear about this stupid mug one more time, I'm gonna crush it when it gets here. So just stuff like that seems a little frivolous, but you can really drill down on other stuff. The other thing I would say that comes up probably daily is I think Activator is a very kind of visceral and instinctive strength. And that's we kind of describe it as almost like this pilot light that's always burning. My wife and I do.
Okay.
And so it can be very reactionary. And so when a problem comes up, or like in that meeting I described earlier, sometimes because of activation and in kind of a subliminal level of impatience, you can react. You can be very reactive instead of responding to situations. And that usually, if folks get a reaction out of me, that's not going to be good for me or for them. So I would say one of the mantras I've tried to live by with Activator in mind is, how can I respond instead of react? Because Activator can be a very, like I said, visceral gut reaction, instinctive, almost brash, kind of, or very just raw. And usually more descriptive of a reaction. So that's me. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, you hit it right there with the impatience. Definitely impatient. Oh my goodness. And the pilot light is a great example, or a great way to say that, because it does feel like that. Like it's always that little light is burning, like, what is going on? What are we doing next? I call it emotional volatility, is maybe the negative side of that. So when I talk about my activator to groups, like when we talk about what these might look like, I call it my Incredible Hulk strength. Because when
you have to tell more
in a meeting, oh my God, Chad, we're going to sit in this meeting and people are talking about what they had for breakfast or what they did this weekend. And the meeting is not about that. That's not why we're meeting. I will start pulling this number with my hands. I'm like digging my fingernails into my palms. I'm scratching at the seams of my pants. I'm like looking around the room like, you've got to be kidding me. Everyone's okay with this. And I'm like, in that moment, imagining myself like green, growing, giant, clothes ripping, like now my pants don't fit, just craziness, because I can't stand the fact that we're just like, stuff isn't happening. So that would be the one like major downfall, I would say, is that like impatience, that definite impatience for things. The other way that it comes out in me is that when I am impatient with others, like maybe it's a one-on-one situation, and I'm going to use the example of my husband and I getting HelloFresh and for the first time, and he was going to start helping making dinner. So he is opening the contents and getting all the stuff out, and he starts to cut some carrots, and I'm literally hovering over him. So When I'm impatient with others and their pace or something else, like that's what I do. I stand over, I hover, I offer unsolicited advice, which everyone loves when you get unsolicited advice, right? Um, and he lovingly told me, and has many times since then, please go activate on something else. Like
Oh, that's
it's
great.
the
Keyword.
perfect it's the perfect thing to say, because in that moment that is what I need to do. I need to pivot and go find something else to do. And that was one of the things I learned from my first coach, my first strengths coach, because I was having this issue, the reactive issue, Adam. I was having that too, where I was reacting as opposed to responding. And so the best way to do that was that find the pause in that moment and push that energy to something else that I can accomplish. For me was the big one, getting something else accomplished.
You know, Adam, I definitely want to hear what you have to say, but I feel like I need to say something, because I find that that comment you just said, Jen, is you talked about it a little bit from a negative standpoint, but the energy itself is not negative. It's just how it's coming out. And so I think that's a beautiful phrase of, there's a positive there, that you have energy. It just needs to be redirected.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. So sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, we're all tracking, because that pilot light can also be a spark, right? To help get your team going. That bias for action, it brings the reactivity can be negative, but it does bring a lot of energy, and people enjoy that. People need it. I think it can come out as an enthusiasm, especially when you're getting stuff started. And I consider Activator to be a very creative strength, especially in a vacuum. So there is no thing, and then you're going to start this thing. And so the HelloFresh example was kind of like, I think of Activator with cooking all the time. I do most of the cooking in my house. Like, there wasn't dinner, I'm activating. Now there is. It's creative. Or especially in the past couple of years in ministry, there were times where we weren't meeting in person. There were times where things had to look a lot different. So you had to get creative and fill some vacuums with some Activator energy. And I found that was really helpful, and that other people saw, oh, we can start something, learn as we go, and even if it fails, that's better than trying nothing. And so I've found Activator very positive in a creative sense, and in like a enthusiasm that's contagious sense. I think that's why it's an influencing strength, is you rallying other people to get going and move things forward, in addition to just yourself. So those were several of the positive. I have positivity number 2.
Oh, okay. See, you're positively activated on most other things, right?
All the time. All the can't stop, won't
in.
stop. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, so I will say, just, I jokingly said at the beginning, it's 34 for me, and it makes it sound like I don't appreciate it, or that it doesn't have a role in my place. But I have deliberative as number 2, and Jen and I started this somewhat out of a deliberative sense of, we wanted to dig into the themes a little bit. What I'm really appreciating about what you're saying, Adam, is we deliberatives like myself need people like you, because if we didn't have people with Activator around us, we would just sit in sort of the worry risk assessment, like, well, what if this fails? I mean, I think that's beautiful, that the way you brought up that fail component, which is, it's okay if you fail. It's just, what'd you learn along the way? So I'm sort of tipping my hat to you that Activator is a great balance to those of us that might be a little bit more, analytical or deliberative. I happen to have analytical as number 5. So that well, why is this going to work, or what's going to happen here, aspect, and Activator can kind of help you get it, not only yourself but others, over that hump. And I think that's fantastic.
Well, they make a great pair. I work right next door with someone who has deliberative. We work great together. If only I knew someone who maybe had both. That would be like a unicorn.
Yeah. So Jen, what are the positives from your side? I love all the things that Adam's already shared. What do you have to add, or maybe put a little exclamation point on?
Yeah, definitely that like quick starter type of movement. In a lot of cases, like I would tell people, like, I don't need you to micromanage me. Like that's not important to me. Like I'm good once you give me a direction. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we got this like flame blower, right? Like, and we just need to point it in the right direction. And we talked a little bit about this, and I loved your analogy of it. Like, I'm more of a, I don't like the when they say, when we talked about activator, it used to be a thing where they would say it's like ready, fire, aim, like that we don't aim.
Yeah.
That's not entirely true. It's just we use that like buckshot, right? Or the like, you know, it's
Yeah,
like the
the
bigger,
shotgun.
the
Yeah.
big, yeah, the shotgun pellets as opposed to like the one like, you know, bullet heading right straight for a pinpoint accuracy. And in doing that, we can learn a lot from it. So that's definitely one of the positives I think from that is that we don't need a lot of, I don't personally need a lot of poking and prodding to get moving. I just need an idea. And with my belief and responsibility, like I said, that if you say we, I think you mean me. Like I'm already like volunteering for that. And then if it like aligns with my beliefs, there is nothing gonna stop this momentum from moving forward. So it's that like constant action. The other thing I think is interesting is the talk about deliberative. So having deliberative as my number 4 and activator as my number 5. Oh, it means
She has to take a breath. This is like flamethrower coming.
It's heavy, right? So I spend a lot, yeah, right. I spend a lot of time worrying about the risks. But my activator pulls me out of that rather quickly. So I might not have gotten through all of the risks that can be there, but I've gotten through enough that I know I can start. So
nice.
a lot of that, like I kind of empathize with Adam too when he was saying like when I asked him if he wanted to be part of our podcast and he was like yeah, and then like a couple texts later, wait, when, what are we doing? So I did the same thing when Chad brought this idea of us talking about strengths and putting our heads together, because we've had so many great conversations about our clients and our talents personally. And so he said, what do you think about doing? And I said, yes. Like, I don't even think I paused. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I'm like, oh God, what did I just sign up for? Right. So there's so many times that happens, that deliberative will tend to slow my activator down, but probably not after I've already said yes to it. So there, I'm a work in progress there.
As we all are. So speaking about others, I'm curious, you know, we've talked a little bit about how it's shown up for each of you. What have you experienced, or are there any other gradations of this theme that you have personally experienced in working with specific clients, or maybe a discussion in a workshop that's been really enlightening around activator? I know years ago when Gallup used to give us coaches, you know, stats on where this showed up, it's not super common, but there are enough people out there that I'm thinking a couple of us have run into at least a few of them. I'm wondering whether there's something there that you want to share. Adam, do you want to go first, or do you have any big insights you want to?
The only thing that I would say is that if I am coaching someone with activator and I find that out maybe after an initial session, or maybe I start working with somebody and they take their test, I always find out I knew that's why I liked them.
Nice. Yeah, I've coached a few people who have it. Now I went through my list because I was like, other than myself and Adam and maybe like a couple other people really close, like my brother, who it's funny because I see it in him all the time too. Another one of those. That's why I like you so much. But I went back through all the people I've coached before, and I was like, man, there's not many. And the few, one was a leader, and a couple were followers. And I will say that all of them regularly leap into problems and like looking for the solutions. So I don't know that that's necessarily like a like problem solving talent necessarily, but I could see like they didn't shy away from that. They were very eager to like get it moving again if it stalled. So I thought that was pretty amazing. They all had an emotional intensity about them, which I love because that's something that I think shows up in Adam and I also. Like you get us excited and you see it, right? Like it
Right.
comes out. And they are also really easily able to get others engaged and on board with ideas. So that was what I loved about the leader that I coached who had it, is like it was contagious almost. That energy was contagious. And I loved seeing them be able to like take things from like just ideas from other people and get them started. It was really amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Both of you have brought up sort of that emotional component. I think that's really beneficial for anybody listening to this, because I know a few times I've had conversations about, well, why is an activator in more of an executing? Because it's a lot of people have that, starting line sort of metaphor or mentality of it's to get you off the starting line. That means we're executing on something, right? But what both of you, I think, are highlighting really well is the emotional aspect of it's contagious. It's that contagion effect that I'm excited, so now you're going to be excited, and hopefully because you're excited now other people are going to be excited. So I think that's beautiful to share. I will say in that vein, one of the few people that had it that I coach extensively. I've had other people in it with workshops, and it's tough to read an activator in a room of 50 people. Right. But the person that had it, that had activator, also had command. And so you talk about wanting to jump in with 2 feet and then some. He was very much, and the impatience. I remember workshops. He's like, all right, let's just kind of get to the next activity. Let's keep this moving, but not shying away from that. So the interest in taking action and then being so at the front of it that sort of that take charge mentality. But again, it's another influencing theme. So he had sort of that dual emotional aspect to it.
Yeah.
So, Jen, I want to ask you one clarifying question about when you say jump into problems, because I think this would be really helpful for people listening. Is do the activators tend to, or the activators that you were talking about, were they jumping into like the middle of a stall problem or situation, or were they jumping in at the beginning to be the pilot light, the spark to get something off the starting line? I'm just wondering if there's some clarity that you want to provide there.
In those cases, Chad, it was both actually. So I'd seen it in both situations where they might have nothing to do with it. It's not even like in their scope of work, not even in their job description, nothing that they necessarily need to do about it, but they were eager to jump in and like keep it moving. So like for the greater good. So and I think it's that like, it's that pilot light again. We could go back to that. Like Adam said, it's that stalling of the process, and we're like, whoa, why are we stalled? Like we need that action, we need that movement, we need that momentum to keep going. And I think even then, that's where they were jumping into things that weren't even really theirs in some cases, and able to keep it moving or get it going again. And then I think we're going to get to it, but I'd say they're it's that like first follower type mentality. Like once the idea is there, it's that ability to like take that and move it into action.
Nice. So we've talked about sparks and pilot lights. One of the things we've done in some of our other podcasts is think about some other imagery, because especially for those of us that don't have it, sometimes it's nice to have a picture of or something that can kind of remind us of the theme. Are there other images that you'd love to put out there or think that is really representative of the theme? It could be from either sort of a negative side or a positive side, but just something that people can kind of think about when they think about this theme.
I got a real nerdy one. It may be a little scary. I told y'all about it the other day, but there's this YouTube video. You need to go on YouTube and look up Leroy Jenkins. And it's this video from 2005. It's got like bazillions of views. And it's this group of folks playing an online game. And they're like all strategizing about what they're going to do. And some guys, one of them's crunching numbers on the probability of their success. So this goes on for like 2.5 minutes. and it's mundane. It's like, what, this is fun for these people,
right?
and then one of the dudes just yells. He hadn't spoken at all, and he just goes, "Time's up. Let's do this." And he runs off into the room, and they're like, "Wait, what's he doing?" Ah! But so like that's what I would boil Activator down to: is time's up. Let's do this.
Time's up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like that consideration period is over. Like
Yeah, we've deliberated for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Too
too
much.
much.
Time has come.
2 minutes too much, probably in that
That's
case
right.
too.
Yeah.
That's right.
I said my Incredible Hulk one earlier, but when you were talking about the spark and the pilot light, I was like, man, isn't that true for us though, Adam? Like, you just light our fuse and get out of the way, right? Like, and that's kind of a another little imagery I thought I liked there too.
Yeah. Nice. Even though I don't have it super high, the one image I came up with that might also be helpful for people is I thought of the catapult off of an aircraft carrier. You know, you see especially like in movies like Top Gun and a couple others, you know, you see the guy sort of touch the guy on the outside sort of touches the ground. It's a signal for the catapult to be let loose, and it's what propels the plane from 0 to like 400 miles an hour, and I think it's about the length of a football field. And that's one of the images I've always had of Activators, that sort of starting line, but just that immediate energy that comes with it. It's not even a sprinter speed. It's like, as you said, it's light the spark and then run, because this thing's going to blow up or, you know, accelerate pretty quickly. So I love your images.
Miles an hour.
What's that?
It feels like 400 miles.
400 miles an hour. Yeah. Those are some great ones. I love your Leroy Jenkins. I'll have to go look that one up a little later. Sounds like entertaining.
It was rather funny, Chad. At the end of it, like everybody's like, "Come on, Leroy! Like, what'd you do? Like, damn it!" You know, like they're all like so upset because, of course, everyone died. Spoiler.
Spoiler alert! Right. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked a lot about sort of personally how this has shown up. Some of the people we've coached. I'm now kind of curious about, you know, as we think about the theme as it applies to teamwork and collaboration. And I'm going to start on the negative side only so that we can kind of end on the positive side. But when we think about, or when people listening to this are thinking about contributions this talent can make to a team, or a negative impact it can have on a team, I'd like you to both maybe think about it from both the individual contributor side. So maybe a team member that doesn't, you know, have any sort of followers following them, but also from a leader side. Like if a leader has Activator, how might it be getting in the way, or could it get in the way, so that their peers or their team can maybe help them refocus? You know, we've talked a little bit about sort of that redirection. So Adam, because you're our beloved guest today, I'm going to put that question to you first about where does this theme have a negative impact on the team from an individual and from a team leader perspective?
Yeah, I think if you're not careful, there could be a frenetic quality to Activator, and just this churn of energy and this desire to do something. Well, if the something isn't aligned with other people's work or with the goals of the organization, you could be off, just off on your own. I mean, not to talk about Leroy Jenkins for 20 minutes. I mean, that's a good picture of what he did. Yeah. And I think there's the great line that was given to me by a manager in my first job was, don't confuse activity with productivity. Mm-hmm. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being productive. Just because you're activating on something, don't confuse that with it automatically being helpful or good or productive. And so that's something I try and keep in mind all the time. Don't confuse activity with productivity. And I think that kind of counts for both an individual on a team or a leader. Is you may not want to start down this path with all these folks if you haven't thought a little bit further down.
Yeah.
And if you're just on your own, kind of as a free agent activating, you may be busy and you may be filling your work hours. And it's not that you're withholding effort. That's something activators don't want to do. I want to give my best effort, but just make sure you're pointed in it the right direction. So don't confuse activity with productivity. And I think something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good one. That'll be a great takeaway for people listening to this. Jen, what about you? Any additions to what Adam said, or something else that strikes you?
As a leader, starting from the leader standpoint, like I think it's really important, like Adam said, to like think through like where this is going and like make sure we're going in the right direction before we just keep going. The other negative impact that this could have is that activators are so excited about getting things started, like they tend to jump from thing to thing too, right? So if you're leading a team and you're like, hey, we should go in this direction, and this direction and this direction, like it starts to muddy the water so much for the followers, like they can not know really what's most important, what really should we be focusing on as a team if we're feeling like we're spread in lots of different directions. So
it's almost like crying wolf.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
really,
one.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's that like the starting and not finishing makes for such an unstable environment for followers. You know, like we don't know where we're going, and it does feel like that. Like, okay, well, you just said that one was most important, and now this one's most important. Like, I don't know what I should be doing with this.
Or Jen read a book, so now we're doing this.
Yes, thank
like
you.
we did 5 times last quarter.
Right.
Flavor of the month.
Right.
Sort of idea.
And that can be the most damaging, especially from a leader's standpoint, is if we are just going with the flavor of the month and not following through. And it doesn't mean that you as an activator and a leader with activator need to be the one that follows through like completely to the end, but you need to at least have the people like in line, maybe delegate that, like what are we doing with this for the long term, like find that, I'm going to say it again, find that first follower who's going to be excited about this and carry it through to the end so that we don't lose that momentum, because I think that can be tough. As a follower, thinking about that emotional volatility. So we talked about that, like the impatience with inaction. And I'm going to bring it back to like that meeting that I was talking about at the beginning, where like we're going to just sit around and talk about what we're going to have for lunch or what we did this weekend, and we're supposed to be doing something else. So a great takeaway from that is to understand that if you are reactive in that moment as a employee, as part of the team, and you're going to react to things instead of respond, you might be pushed to shut others down, shut yourself down, potentially push others into ideas before they're really ready to move forward. All of those things are bad. So perhaps in those moments, I'm going to give some like ideas for action. So because we love action, and we like seeing things move forward, like my personal things I do is look for like, how can I come up with like one new idea out of this meeting, even if it isn't related to what we're supposed to be doing. So like we all just talked about lunch and what we did this weekend. What's one new idea like I can come up out of this, because this needs to be important and needs to mean something. It needs to have some purpose for me. And that might be my belief coming into. But as far as activator goes, what are 2 actions that can be completed at the end of this meeting? So whether that's like keeping a list of like, okay, these are the things we need to do now based on this meeting that we had. What are some actions we can come away with? They can be things that I'm going to do, or they can be things that maybe need to be delegated to others. And then I think the most important one is this like 3 new things that you can learn or that you didn't know during that meeting. So it might be even in that case, like I'm super heavy executing over here. So, but all of this talk about lunch and what they did this weekend, I just learned a bunch of stuff about my other like cohorts in my team. So how can some of that information help me build some bridges between people so that my activator isn't going to immediately like splurge out and Hulk all over everyone to keep us moving, but instead like I can start to build some camaraderie with my teammates. So those are my ideas, at least for action, to keep those kind of at a minimum. The only other one I wanted to bring up, sorry, I'm going to keep talking, is
activator. Keep going.
Your show.
We were help me. We were talking about that that like going down, like the don't confuse action with progress, right? So we could be going down this road and we're like really far down and now we're wasting resources, right? So because we could have been doing something else. So while I was thinking about this, I was thinking about that, what a silly waste of resources this was. The stepmom or the mom-in-law
Yeah.
from
Christmas
Christmas
vacation.
Vacation, as he's like spent the entire weekend like putting the lights on the house, and they checked every bulb and they unknotted them all, you know, but really it came down to like he didn't plan the like how everything's plugging in and to flip the switch, right? So it's that like sometimes we get too far down the road before we realize like that there was something simple at the beginning. And I think that's just something else that can happen when we're activating on stuff, is that you know, we're
negatively
400,
impacting the team.
yeah, we're 400 miles an hour, you know, we're like off the gate or out of the gate
Yeah.
so quickly.
When you end up wasting time, which is what annoyed you in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then
Yeah.
it's a cycle.
So now that we've Jen, first of all, I think it's fantastic you started to take that negative and turn it into a positive, that, and it comes back to that activity that you were sharing before of refocusing the activator. You know, your 3-2-1 exercise was essentially just a tool or a method for doing that redirection. What can you go activate on elsewhere or in a different way? So I think that's fantastic. As we think about some positives, as we start to wrap up here and think about, you know, going out into the world with your activator colleagues and team members and so forth, what are some positive contributions that activator brings, you know, particularly in those two roles that we've sort of started to talk about, as sort of the team contributor and then the team leader? And I'm going to cycle right back to you, Adam, because I'd love to hear what you have to say on it from those two perspectives.
So we talked earlier about one of the advantages of activator being a creative strength. And I would hope that as a leader in an organization with activator, that I'm helping make not just the activation contagious, but permission to start and try and experiment.
That's a great one.
Contagious. So I have this yearly calendar that is on my desk that someone gave me, which I really like. And I haven't changed it since June 22nd. But it does say the only man who never makes a mistake is the one who never does anything.
Oh, good.
You know, you can tell I'm a
that.
one-liner kind of person. And
perfect for an activator, one-liners.
Yeah, just boom. What else do you need? You don't need a whole
Theodore
paragraph.
Roosevelt, my favorite.
Old Teddy.
Nice.
And I hope that is contagious on my staff at church and with our folks to say, hey, let's try something. And if it doesn't work, what did we lose? The only thing that would make us lose is just to be too scared to try anything. So I hope that's a real positive factor that is on a team. And the cool part about that pilot light, or that inner kind of burning energy, is that after you've maybe tried something and experimented and failed, it gives you the ability and the energy to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and activate again.
Yep.
Yeah. So those I've found to be real advantages.
Nice. You know, you mentioned about getting up and dusting off. For anybody that has seen the Captain Marvel movie, there's a scene toward the tail end where she replays all these scenes from her life where she's been knocked down. I think she crashes a go-kart. She falls in her military training from a 15-foot high rope, and a couple others, and all of the scenes end up with her dusting off. And I think that's awesome. Another great image for us to keep in mind of activator, you know, getting up off the ground and getting going on to the next thing.
Yeah. The courage to start again, to try something.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anything else, Adam, or do you want to toss it over to Jen?
Take it away.
Take it away, Jen.
Okay, so I love those ideas, and the dusting off definitely rings true for me too. So that's a great point to make. For positive contributions to a team, I think as someone with activator, you can be that like ignition for your team. So to keep things moving, we're hungry for action. And I think people with that high activator talents make great first followers. So if you've never looked it up, if you look up YouTube and find the first follower, it's this weird dancing guy. He's all by himself in a
Oh,
field
yes, I have seen
dancing,
that.
right?
Oh, I've seen that too.
Yes, yes, he's
Okay.
on a hill.
And then
It's sort of a
and
concert or
yes,
something.
and there's tons of people around. He's the only one dancing. But when does it really start? When does that whole idea really ignite? And there's like hundreds of people when that first follower jumps on board. So it's like, I feel like that's the people in the meeting said, well, when I think we should do this, our first instinct as activators is to be like we're the we, like, let's do this. And so I do think of that a lot. Is like, they are great first followers and they can get the momentum and the energy up for the team. So I love activators on a team for that reason. I also think they regularly learn by doing, so they can kind of be the guinea pig of the group, right? So I do a lot of off-roading too, so like, love my Jeep life. So we do a lot of like trying things out. I have a Jeep that I drive to work every day, and it needs to work every single day. And so I'm not necessarily going to be the first one to be like, yeah, I'll try it. But you get the people who are like, yeah, I'll do it, because it's just their play vehicle, right? So like, they're happy to be the guinea pig. So in those instances, they're not afraid of trying new things, or to like start out on an idea. And if it doesn't go right, it's okay. Like, we just, we learned. Now we don't do it that way next time. We can do something else. Adam, I think you had a great example of that too, when you were talking about some things that you did with your church for Mother's Day. I thought was a great example of that.
Yeah. We had this tradition where we'd give folks flowers on Mother's Day. We'd give them a carnation. When we weren't meeting, it was like, oh gosh, what can we do for moms? And it was like, well, and I'm an alliteration. I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but I think you get a dictionary of alliteration when you become a pastor.
Love it.
And we thought, well, we could wash people's cars and give them carnations. So we called it Carnations and Car Washes. And I posted up on Mother's Day at the car wash here in our town, about 10,000 people, with money, quarters. I had a bucket full of quarters for the car wash and a whole thing of flowers. And it was like, what do we have to lose? And it was hilarious. I have a few stories from there, but my favorite was, you had all these last minute people that would drive by me on their way to the shopping, or the grocery store, realize the grocery store was out of flowers, and then try and offer me like hundreds of dollars for some of my flowers. I really could have cleaned up. And it was cool, because as a church, I'm like, no, they're here for us to give you. So anyway, but like, would I go do that this Mother's Day? I don't know, maybe not. But rather than, to Jen's point, I'm willing to risk sitting out in a lawn chair at a car wash looking like an idiot. It's better than nothing.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
And we washed a lot of mom's cars that day, so I'm glad.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And then, as a sort of, to wrap it up, as a leader, I'd say this is perfect in Adam. You aren't afraid of trying new things. And so you rarely will hear them say, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we need to do it. Right. Yeah. So they are open to taking some of those risks. They are emotionally motivational, and like, love the new ideas, like keep them coming. Like, yeah, let's try it out. So.
Awesome. Those are some great contributions. I've learned a ton about Activator today. As we wrap up, I'm wondering if there's one big idea that you definitely don't want to let people miss, or maybe want to re-highlight as we wrap up and finish our recording for today. Adam, big thought that you want to leave on the table at the very end here?
Yeah, I'd say kind of those 2 one-liners have been hugely impactful for me. Whether you're an activator or not, how can you respond instead of react? And whether you have an activator in your top 10 or not, don't confuse activity with productivity.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think about those 2 every week of my life at some point.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic. Jen, what would you add, or what are your 2, maybe 1 or 2 big takeaways that you want to make sure people listen for?
Remember to pause and pivot in that emotional intensity in order to keep from reacting, And instead of that response that you want, pause and pivot. Like, where can you put that? Where can you put that emotional intensity that will be helpful, so that you don't hurt others around you? And also, you can't succeed if you don't try. So.
Oh, nice. That's a good one to end with too. Oh,
I'll
Adam, go ahead.
I'll log one more on. I'm going to remember we doesn't automatically mean me as an activator.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that too.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't, but it does. Right? At least that's how it feels. But it doesn't mean that it has to be you.
Yeah, that was a light bulb for me, for sure. When you said that, I was like, oh wait, I definitely do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to take away that, Adam, you're waiting for Jen to show up at your meeting because you keep waiting for we to show up. Well, apparently it's
that's right. Well, I got to sell, so
here she is.
Don't be surprised if we get a call.
Yeah.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
So thank you both so much for educating both myself as well as our listeners on Activator today. I think this has been fantastic. As we finish up, I'm just going to encourage, we're going to have Adam's contact information in our show notes. So go check out his great work at his ministry at the First United Methodist, right?
You got it.
Awesome.
Kearney, Missouri. We're about a half hour north of Kansas City.
Awesome. Well, if you're in Missouri, Kansas City area, go visit Adam. I'm sure he'd love to see you. I want to activate on that. Baby. Yep. We'll have another conversation about Go Chiefs, but we'll have his contact information in the show notes. We encourage everybody to subscribe and keep following each episode. We're going to keep going through each of the 34 talent themes, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have a thought on our show today or something else you want to learn about CliftonStrengths, drop us a note or drop us a comment. And always, we appreciate reviews. Love to get better. So with that, I'm Chad.
And I'm Jen.
And he's
Adam. Thank you all so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next show.